Welcome to California Unearthed. I am in Fullerton, California, one of my two hometowns here in Southern California. While I'm here, I wanted to do a walking historical tour with you. So thought I'd start here at the train depot. This is where Fullerton got its start, is through the railroad. So we're going to do some railroad history, musical history, and some cultural history. So come join me. So as I said, this is the Santa Fe Railroad Depot. This is actually the third depot here on property. The first depot was built in 1888 by the Santa Fe Railroad Company. There was a wooden structure. They demolished that wooden structure in 1929 to make room for the 1930 depot that you see behind me. But there was also another depot across the railroad tracks in 1923. It was the Union Pacific Railroad. They were in competition with the Santa Fe Railroad, and so that depot still exists. It was moved in 1980 to the other side of the tracks here, and we'll go check that out here in a few minutes, and then definitely go inside and check out the architecture here in this depot. I don't believe I can get into the 1923 depot. That is now what they call the Old Spaghetti Factory. It's a restaurant, and it's not open yet, so I don't think I can get in there, but I'm going to try. So anyway, so the history of Fullerton: George and Edward Ambridge came from Massachusetts here to California, heard that Santa Fe Railroad was looking for some land to build the railroad. And when they confirmed that by getting a hold of the purchaser of land for Santa Fe, who was George H. Fullerton, George and Edward Ambridge ended up buying 430 acres, which is now Fullerton. They staked the town, which is now on the corner of Harbor and Commonwealth, which is just right around the corner here, about a block away, if that. And from that point, history started being made. The railroad was built in 88, and actually, when the Union Pacific came in, there were 3 railroad lines here in Fullerton. It was the Union Pacific, the Santa Fe, and the Pacific Electric, which was a trolley line from here to La Habra, from La Habra to Los Angeles, that carried freight and passengers. And that line ended in, I believe, 1939, and they stopped doing freight in 1940. But we'll talk about that later as well. So let's go check out the inside of this depot, and we'll go from there. So like I said, this depot's been here since 1930. This is a very active depot. In just the 10 minutes that I've been here, 3 trains have gone by already. Look at those chandeliers. Woodwork. This is a Spanish colonial revival architecture. The plaque on the side of the building here, it is registered with the National Register of Historic Places. Alright, let's go check out the 1923. This is the 1923 Union Pacific Depot that was moved across the tracks to here in 1980. Like I said, the Union Pacific was the competition to the Santa Fe. Even though Santa Fe was the one that started here in Fullerton, Union Pacific wanted a piece of the action as well. This is now the Old Spaghetti Factory. As I said, there's 3 rail lines in Fullerton: the Union Pacific, Santa Fe, and the Pacific Electric, which was a trolley system that ran up to Los Angeles. This building here is the Pacific Electric Depot, built in 1918. So the trolley ran between 1917 and 1938 for passengers and stopped running in 1940 for freight. But this was the depot. In 1950, this depot was turned into a Greyhound station up until 1976. So it ran as Greyhound from 1950 to 1976. 1981, a restaurant moved in and has been a restaurant ever since. Once here on the corner of Berkeley and Harbor in Fullerton stood the Pacific Electric bridge over Harbor Boulevard. Here's an old photograph of it, but that's where this stood. The Pacific Electric trolley went down this way. This is now a running, walking, biking trail called the Bridle Trail. People ride horses down here as well. This goes all the way to Imperial Highway, past Laguna Lake. But if we look this direction, that is where Pacific Electric would run. Right over the bridge right there. And if you look very carefully, you can still find old railroad spikes every now and then as you're walking through here. So where I'm standing at now is the heart of Fullerton. It is the City Hall building. This was built in 1939, and City Hall was dedicated in 1942, July of 1942, and is now the Fullerton Police Department. But what's funny about that is the Fullerton Police Department has been housed here since 1942. They have never moved. But once again, you see that Spanish architecture that you see all over Fullerton here. What's really cool about it, it has a basement, kind of a plaza area, which is kind of neat. I'll show that to you here in a second. And then the other side of that clock tower is a newer section of the building that is not made or not built from 1939. This is not the only clock tower in Fullerton. The high school also has a clock tower as well. There's the lower plaza. See if I can get a better view. The lower plaza I was talking about. In 1963, the old City Hall was replaced by the new building that's behind me. You can definitely tell this is 1960 architecture. So this is the current City Hall for Fullerton and has been since, like I said, 1963. It is right across the street from the old City Hall, which is now the Fullerton Police Station. This is the Fullerton Post Office. This is one of, I think, 7 places that the post office landed. This is the permanent location for the post office. 1939 is when this building was built. Before that, the post office was in a couple of different grocery stores and a couple other brick buildings there on Harbor Boulevard. But this was the first official post office here in Fullerton. Like I said, 1939. What's kind of funny about that is the Fullerton Post Office was one of the last official post offices to be established in Orange County. Anaheim and other cities were getting official post offices before Fullerton did. The plaque for the post office, 1939. Once again on the National Register. If you're a lover of music, whether you play a guitar, you don't play a guitar, you know the name Lou Fender. And Lou Fender was born 1909 here in Fullerton, California, and he was an accountant for many, many years until 1938 when he was laid off. He always liked to tinker with electronics, so in 1938 when he was laid off, he opened up this store at 107 Harbor Boulevard and started repairing radios and selling records. In the front of the store, in the back of the store, is where the magic happened. The back of the store is where he built amplifiers and got his start building guitars. This is where the Telecaster and then the Stratocaster were built, right here in this building. He later on became more and more famous. More and more quantities of guitars were being built. That's when he moved just a block down the road. But here's the sign proclaiming Leo Fender's building. Once again on National Register of Historic Places. When Lou Fender outgrew his little shop a block away on Harbor Boulevard, he came up to North Pomona here. Like I said, only a block away. It's a garage now, but at one point in time, this place produced the guitars that famous guys like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, all these guys would play the guitars. They were produced right here in Fullerton, in the building behind me. Not the building, but the property behind me, which is now a garage. If you look at the building, there are some murals of guitars. There's no sign or plaque saying that Lou Fender was here, but they did have some murals here. Unfortunately, that's all. I would like to see a plaque here at some point in time. So across the street from me is Ambridge Park. This was the second location for Fullerton High School. Fullerton High School was here in 1900 until 1911 when the school burned down. Here's a photograph of the school here that was here in 1911. From 1911, after it burned down, it moved over to the third location over on Chapman. This is also the site of baseball history. A lot of baseball teams in the 20s and 30s had spring training in this park behind me as well. This is the third Fullerton High School location. They put the school here in 1911 when the Ambridge Park location burned and was destroyed. There was wooden bungalows here until 1922 when they put 13 Spanish-style buildings, which you see behind me, in the 32 acres here on campus. In 1930, Plummer Auditorium was built, and that's the building just to the left of me. We'll get a better shot of that here in a second. But this is my alma mater, my high school. This is my uncle's high school. So there's a lot of history here for me. The Spanish style architecture runs throughout the high school, except for the library, which is right there. They didn't follow the architecture, unfortunately. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, but we're going to run around the high school a little bit, show you a couple things. But like I said, this is the third location. The high school originally was started in 1893, went over to Ambridge Park in 1900, and then here in 1911. And it's been sitting here ever since. This is Plummer Auditorium, built in 1930. Beautiful, beautiful building. This is where the Fullerton drama classes take place inside this beautiful auditorium. And I just found out today that they will be refurbishing this here shortly. So let's go on campus for a minute. I'm going to show you around. We can't go too far on campus because of COVID, but there's a few things I want to show you guys. This is just right in here. Oh, they've locked it. These murals on the wall, these are pretty cool. Let's see if we can go any farther. I'm looking for a certain something. Oh, here we go. This gate's open. This is the side of the auditorium. Here's a picture of, this used to be the front of the school. Building's obviously been torn down now. Here's a photograph of the school from an aerial view. I don't see them anywhere. Oh, here we go. And what we're looking at here, you see this says class of 2016. This is a time capsule. And there's one of these plaques for every graduating class along the hallways here at the high school. And each one of these has a yearbook and memorabilia from the class. This one 2017, this will probably be 2018. I can't read it from here. But those are time capsules. So what's really cool about this campus that I forgot to mention, because the traffic is a little noisy out there, is underneath this campus are tunnels. And the tunnels were for like bomb shelters, stuff like that. So they had all the supplies for emergencies in these tunnels, which is kind of cool. The tunnels still exist under this campus. We're still on Harbor Boulevard. This is the Fox Fullerton Theater. This movie theater was built in 1924. It was a movie theater, vaudeville, played silent films, had a movie theater stage. The marquee has been taken down. They used to say Fox Fullerton Theater on it. But this theater was built or designed by the same designers as the Mann Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Physically built by Stanley Chapman, who was the son of Charles Chapman, the first mayor of Fullerton. The building to the left is the tea room. So you would go in here, have tea, snacks before the show. The building to the right is the Firestone Building. Gas pumps are long gone, but the building still exists. They are in the middle of redoing this whole thing. There's some beautiful, beautiful murals inside. I used to come here as a kid up until '87. Saw many, many movies here. Everything from Clash of the Titans to Benji, Ordinary People, Chariots of Fire, Star Wars, you name it. All the movies from the 70s and early 80s I saw in this theater here. It's a one-room theater, and this theater is a beloved treasure here in Fullerton. It was slated to be torn down and have apartments built here, but the residents of Fullerton protested and they were able to save the building. They are now, like I said, in a reconstruction, very, very expensive reconstruction project. We are at Hillcrest Park on Harbor Boulevard. This is a well-beloved park. Anybody who lives in Fullerton knows this park very, very well. As school children, we all came here looking for tadpoles in the creek. There's a 32-acre park established in 1920. Back in 1920, there was no trees or anything. This was a auto camp park. So you came out here to camp in your automobile. In 1920s, there weren't very many automobiles back in those days, but the ones that were would camp out here until 1930, when the city decided to turn this into a park. They planted the trees, made the trails. In 1932, they built 3 buildings out here. One was a Legion Hall. Another one is a Red Cross building now, which used to be a children's library. And then there's a log cabin on property as well. So we're going to go across the street and walk through the park. On a clear day, you can see the ocean. This is the American Red Cross building, which used to be the children's library I was telling you about, built in 1932. This is the top end of the park. This is the American Legion building, built in 1932 as well. Once again, top of the park. So the last place that I'm going to take you guys today, I know there's a whole lot more that I'm missing here in Fullerton, but I don't want to make this video an hour, 2 hours long, which I can obviously do with the history here in Fullerton. So I'm going to end it here today. We are at the Muckenthaler Center. This building behind me is a house that was built in 1923 by Walter Muckenthaler. It is 7,600 square feet. The original ranch was 80 acres. That is no longer the case anymore, but the house itself still exists. It's an amazing piece of property. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we can't get into it today. It is a cultural center and has been a cultural center since 1963, when the Muckenthaler family donated it to the city of Fullerton. When it was a working ranch, I shouldn't say ranch, orchard, Walter Muckenthaler had walnuts, lemons, and avocados planted on the 80 acres. The property went from here over to Commonwealth. We are on Malvern right now, which is actually Chapman, Malvern, almost the same thing, over to Commonwealth, which really isn't that far that way, but that's how far the property extended out to. And the Muckenthalers were a pretty wealthy family. Once again, we have a Spanish influence with an Italian twist to it, because the Muckenthalers traveled to Italy a few times and all through Europe, and they brought back that Italian architecture with them and incorporated it into this house. So hopefully we can come back someday when this is open and we can do a whole video just on the Muckenthaler Center itself. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this short history of Fullerton, and let me know if you want me to come back and do a more intensive history on any of the things I've covered, or something new that I may have missed. So don't forget to subscribe, comment, smash the like button on the video, share it with others. We'll see you guys on the next one.